Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Maxwell Construction, who has been our sponsor since the very beginning. For over 30 years, Maxwell has delivered the highest quality projects by holding to their core values of customer satisfaction, positive attitude, respect, and excellence. So if you have any kind of commercial construction need, give Maxwell Construction a call today at 812-537-2200.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Rock Solid Radio. Hello, lovely Linda. How are you doing?
You know, what if my name wasn't Linda? If it started with an M, what would you?
Lovely Minda.
Magnificent.
Lovely.
Hey, welcome everybody
Melinda.
to another episode of Rock Solid Radio. And if you noticed, if you're watching via YouTube, you're going to see that we have a new set.
The set is finally finished.
You have done a lot of work. I'm impressed.
Well,
Thank you.
It's going to have to do.
Yes,
it's
I
going to
love
have
it.
to do.
I love
As
it.
Kyle said, it looked like a third grader did it. Well, thank you, Kyle. I love you, brother.
Oh, well, I appreciate you, hon. And yes, we've been working off of a blank wall for several weeks. So if you're just tuning in and seeing this, then hopefully you're noticing that something's changed.
Yeah. So
Appreciate you.
It's good to get it going, and also just having a better studio to work out of,
Mm-hmm.
where the sound's a little bit better. Slowly upgrading equipment, but
Huge learning
a lot
curve.
of that is coming together. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, what are we talking about today?
Well, I wanted to know if you survived last week's show because it was a tough one.
Well, are you trying to tell me something?
No, I'm just saying the topic was tough.
I survived it well. I'm hoping our couples survived it that are listening.
Yeah.
So we did the predictors of divorce last week, and if you missed that show, we do ask that you go back and you listen to that episode, because that episode is filled with all of the signs and symptoms, if you will, about basically the train wreck that's in front of us if our marriage is going bad. And a lot of times it's not, if it's already blowing up in front of us, it's the stuff that's the kind of the precursor. It starts slowly. It's a slow build. And then, if we let it go, it slowly deteriorates into that divorce.
I think that last comment is important, hon, and that is if you let it go. And
Yeah.
so our goal would be to stop it and to correct it. And so really the disclaimer we want to say about last week's show is that these are couples that were studied over a period of, some of them, 20 years, and they didn't do anything to change. They didn't get help, and they did not correct their behavior when they saw the train wreck ahead. So we want to help you to see that so you don't go down that road.
Yeah, so that's what that show was about, but we're not going to let it sit there. We told you that we wouldn't let it sit there, and so this week we're going to do the Masters of Disaster.
Yeah, you had that all backwards last week.
No.
You kept saying the Masters of Disaster. Like, no, it's Masters or Disasters. It's not Masters of
You
Disasters.
mean you can't be a master of the disaster?
Well, we're talking about the Masters
How
of
about
relationship.
this? How about the master of the relationship?
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good
And-
idea. You should say that.
Or, as we called it this week, divorce-proofing your marriage. And so we really want to give you some tools. There is hope available. We're not here to be this doomsday show that says, hey, you're heading for disaster. We want to say, hey, no, stop and turn the course so that you can master these relationships and find yourself thriving and growing as a couple.
When we talk about patterns start, and they usually start, early on for whatever reason. We had to make an accommodation, we had to make an adjustment, and that was kind of the pattern that we worked in. And in the moment, it seemed to work well. It got us through a difficult time or whatever. And that pattern, if we continue it on, might not be the healthy thing that we do for the long haul. Just recently, we've talked about my knees before and my body falling apart.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm working with a therapist right now. In fact, I met with them today, and really that's what our discussion was. What my pattern is not something that started yesterday.
Right.
It's a pattern of just everything from posture to how joint function and
How you work out.
How you work out,
Yep.
and you just get into those patterns.
Right.
And while you're in the middle of them, you're thinking, well, it works.
Right.
It works. And then you see the long haul either damage or position that it has you in. and you've got to do the work. And I mean, that's what sits in front of me now. I've got to make the work, everything from postural things. And the hard part about that is it is the daily stuff. It's the stuff that doesn't always seem to matter much. It's like when I'm sitting there watching TV, I have to start watching TV a little differently in terms of how I hold my body. Yeah, so now I'm going to start standing on my head when I watch TV.
I haven't heard about this.
You're going to like this therapy.
Great.
But that's the same thing with our marriages, hon. We see people, whether they use sarcasm or they express anger in a certain way, and it kind of gets the job done.
When you're 25,
Yeah, it kind of it works, or we excuse it because we can accommodate in other ways to kind of overshadow it. But then it starts to wear people out. It starts to break them down. And as I mentioned in a show with Kyle the other day, hon, most of the people, the majority of our relationships that come into our office are not these people that are in the 2 to 5 year part. We have those that come in, but most of them are actually these 15, 20, 25 year marriages that you're thinking, well, shoot, you should have been over the hard part by now.
Yeah, you should be a master.
Yeah, and now what we're seeing is the pattern that was established back in the first 5 years is leading them astray. It'd be great if you could catch it in that first 5 years so you didn't have to have this 20 years down the road. But we don't. We make life happens, we make it work, and we make those adjustments on the fly, but sometimes we pay a price for those. So that's kind of what today we're going to get into. How do we do the correctives today so that we don't have to be having this conversation 20 years from now?
And so maybe you're listening and you feel like your marriage is healthy and strong, but there's someone that you love that you're really concerned about, then this is a great show to share with them. Hopefully you've listened last week as well. But if you're just tuning in and you have no idea what we're talking about and you are totally oblivious to last week's show, we're glad you're here, but we really encourage you to go back.
But you need to do better. You need to start tuning in.
No.
Oh, hey, I'm sorry. Did that come off
because someone
wrong?
shared it for the very first time. So we're glad that you're here. And my name is Linda Hutchinson, by the way, the executive director.
Did I not say your?
Rock
I said lovely
Solid
Linda.
Families. And did you even say who you were?
Merrill.
Merrill Hutchinson, the president, is El Presidente of Rock Solid Families.
Let's get to stuff that really matters, okay? Let's thank our sponsors. We want to thank Maxwell Construction and Casey's Outdoor Solutions, 2 local businesses in our area that believe in our community and believe in what we are trying to do for our community. So we want to thank these guys and just the sponsorship, but just the support and encouragement they give us. We talk to these guys frequently, and they just say, hey, keep doing what you're doing. They love that we are kind of a local coaching counseling organization in kind of a rural area. You don't usually have to go to the city to get that.
In Southeast Indiana is where we're coming from. But we know that there's people who are listening and watching all over the Cincinnati area, all over the nation, all over the world. We have international listeners and watchers. So if that's you and you are really, this show hits close to home and you're looking for some help, give us a call at 812-576-ROCK. That's 7625, or you can contact us through our website, rocksolidfamilies.org. If we can't help you, we will definitely find someone that can. So we're here to help and help us spread the word. I mean, this would be a huge way to help support our message in this ministry. It's by just spreading the word about Rock Solid Radio, about your podcast, which you've got your shirt on.
Strong Dads.
Did you even wash that in between episodes?
I have like 10 of them.
Strong Dads, which you can also find on YouTube and podcast platforms. And, rate our shows, subscribe to our channels, share our shows. Those are ways that you can help get this message out.
One of the asks that we have as well is we try to help anybody who walks through our door. And sometimes people don't walk through the door, or they don't sustain their work with us because of finances. And so we ask that if you would be willing to consider helping a couple or helping an individual by helping underwrite people's sessions with us, and whether that's like, hey, I'd like to here's $50 for one of our sessions that we would cover, or sometimes people, say, here's $200. Let this help somebody through
or
4
$100
sessions
a
or
month.
So.
We have people that recurring giving for every month.
So
just saying, hey, we're here to help.
Yeah. So you may not be a counselor, but you may allow somebody to get counseling through your ability to create a resource that would help. So please consider that. You can always reach us and talk to us us through rocksolidfamilies.org if you have a question about that through our email contact page.
Yeah. But, hon, last week, a little background, we really got into some research by a psychology professor, a relationship guru by the name of Dr. John Gottman, and he has done research for the past 40 years in what he first called, remember, the Love Lab, later now called the Gottman Institute. And so he had worked with couples, some of them following him for 20 plus years, and has done 40 plus years of research. And so he had found some predictors, as we talked about last week, of divorce, up to 90% accurate, and just really seeing that train wreck ahead before it ever happens. And so we talked about that last week. It wasn't a fun show, but what we're going to talk about this week is really the remedy of that. Of what it looks like to be a master of your relationship, of your marriage.
Right. Yeah.
To see it thrive.
Last week was a matter of you going and kind of hearing the diagnosis of what the situation is.
Yeah.
But if you leave and you just have a diagnosis, you're not even partially fulfilled.
Good. That's
yes.
good. Like you don't have a treatment plan.
You're right. No treatment plan. This week we're going to actually talk about what do we do now when we see those predictors? How do we go about them? What are some things that we can do that are even preventative? So maybe you don't really see any big red flags, but what are some things that we can make sure that we do just so that we basically cut them short so that they never form?
Yeah.
So, hon, what's the first one?
Well, I think before we get to the first one, I really want to give you a second to go get a piece of paper and a pen, because honestly,
You're always making them write stuff.
I know.
Jeez.
That's the teacher in us, right? I had a client the other day that referred someone, and they came in, and I gave them homework, and she's like, "Oh, they told me you were going to do that," and I was like, "Yeah, I kind of am known for homework."
No, that's what that's how you avoided teachers when you were choosing when you were a kid. Did they give homework? Oh, I'm not going to sign up for that teacher.
I'm not going to quiz you on it later, but I think it would help to have these down, because really I studied Gottman 20 years ago and have since just followed him in his work, and so I take notes all the time when I listen to him or watch him or read from him. So the very first one, hon, is building love maps. And so Gottman would say that to build love maps is to ask questions, is to dialogue. And we give this for homework to couples a lot, don't we?
Yes. Yeah. So, well, what do you think he means by a love map? Putting that together, if today I think of a map as something. Well, we don't even use maps. We have GPS. Maybe he needs to change his language here.
That's true.
Maybe he
build GPS.
Build love GPSs. The idea here is really trying to understand how to love each other, how to lean into each other. We've made this in a slightly different conversation that we had once, how we oftentimes love each other wrong. We think we're hitting the nail on the head, and we actually are maybe even irritating by the things that we're doing. And whether we think they're funny or whether we think they're very nice, they're not taken that way. And so that's part of the homework that I give very frequently. I want you to just have discussions on, and don't make this a guessing game. Like, I'm going to guess to see how well I can love you. Just tell me, because I've bought you watches before. I've bought you certain things, and then she gave that look that you just saw. That it's like, oh, well, I did really well on that one.
And it was my, part of it is letting you know what makes me feel loved.
I never asked, and you didn't share, and so I make an assumption on, well, she would like this, and then you either spend the time or the money or even you put your thought into it, and it gets rejected, and then you're wondering why. And hon, I've done the same with you. You've bought me certain things that you thought would be good, and I roll my nose at it, and it's like...
Roll your nose? How do you do that?
Something like that.
There you go. Yeah, something
Snarl.
like that. Oh, that's when YouTube's really good for that.
Yeah, that'll be good. You can't see that, can you?
Yeah.
So... let's stop missing the mark, because here's what happens. It's one thing when you love wrong and you get that look, okay? But what it actually does is it gets you back to what we talked about last week, a contempt in your heart. You go, oh, they don't even get me.
They don't even care.
They don't even get me. They don't understand. And so even though I don't like the gift or whatever it was that was done for me, out of love, okay, I'm rejecting the gift, as well as now I'm going to reject the person because they don't get me.
Okay, so our daughter probably won't like this very much, but she's learning about how to have a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex.
Yeah, you better watch this.
No, I'm just saying. And
good thing she doesn't listen.
No, good thing she doesn't listen. But she's asking questions.
Yes.
just, two teenagers that are trying to show they're interested, and they're just, of course, they're texting, which drives me crazy, but they're just texting back and forth questions. What's your favorite season? What's your favorite holiday? What's your favorite Bible verse, which I thought was really cool? What's your favorite food? What's your favorite subject? And they're literally creating a map. I'm not going to say love map, but they're creating a relationship map.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the way you start a friendship. That's the way you build relationships. And it doesn't even have to be just in marriage. It could be with your boss. It could be with a coworker. It could be with a friend, a child. That's how you build that relationship and grow together.
Yeah. By the time we're married for 20 or 30 years, we shouldn't be surprising our spouse very often with different things that we love or we like, And we have done that before. Yeah. Like, you like peanut butter and bananas? What? I've been eating peanut butter and bananas for the last 20 years. You're just now recognizing it?
No, because when I realized that you liked crunchy peanut butter and I buy creamy for like last 10 years, who knew?
Well,
yeah.
Here's your sign.
Here's my sign.
All right.
But hun, Dr. Gottman does say, this is something to write down, guys.
Oh, whoa.
That listening to each other, especially listening to your wife, is like Viagra to women.
Wait, where's that pen? I need to write that down.
Seriously, you need to write this down. Listening to your spouse, especially a man to a woman, is really what builds intimacy. If she feels like you heard her and you listened and you care to even ask, man, that makes a difference.
Hun, let me interject.
I'm going to drop the mic on that one.
I'm going to drop more than the mic. We will continue with the show in just a second here. So part of the challenge, though, hun, when I deal with couples, and not always, but I'll generalize here to men, when you say listen to the women, and that is motivating and emotionally just exciting and where she wants to be and when he is going to listen. But they oftentimes, us men, listen to offer a solution or a fix.
Yeah.
And that all of a sudden becomes about me. If you're telling me your story and then I'm going, oh, well, maybe what you ought to do is, the next thing you know, I'm trying to kind of enhance who I am by saying, I've got the power to help you here. And that's not what you're looking for.
No. Or
chances are you've got the ability, or you've already got the solution in you for whatever it is that you're offering. You just want to be heard.
Or one up, like, oh, you think that's bad. I didn't sleep all night last night. And so, hey, I wanted to show you, hun, I had a young couple I did their premarital counseling for, and they shared with me something that they bought, which I wish I could take credit for it, but it's called the Marriage Journal. And you can actually get it at themarriagejournal.com. And it's really cool. They've been doing this weekly, and it gives you just a place to write down some questions. It has questions, and then write down their answers and kind of just do like a weekly check-in. And this is really cool. And it's got different devotionals to do together. But I thought it was really a neat idea. And I actually bought one. I bought one for us. And so I thought that was very cool.
Are you going to fill that out?
But I just think it's really neat that a young couple knows already how to divorce-proof their marriage.
Right, how to lean into each other.
I love that.
So how about this? Let's go to the next part of this, and that is just you're going to have to explain this to the men, okay? Because this is definitely women's writing here. Share fondness and admiration.
That's not my writing. That's Dr. Gottman's. He's a guy. He's a dude.
But he's writing to women.
Well, the second key is really divorce-proof your marriage is to create a culture of appreciation and fondness and express it regularly. Just don't say, I love you, I love you, I love you, but to do things that show that, making deposits, emotionally connecting, and that just, whether it be kind words, whether it be thank yous, compliments, like you look beautiful today, or you look great in that gray.
You just made fun of my shirt.
That gray shirt. Actually, I did compliment you the other day because you were.
Don't go there.
Your muscles were coming out of your shirt, and I was like, "Man, you're looking buff."
Do you know how many arm curls I had to do before that video shoot?
Now people are going to go back and
ridiculous.
Look for. I'm just saying, but didn't I not compliment you?
You did. But so part of the part here that you talk about the fondness, but from a male's perspective, I don't know a male who does not want to be appreciated,
Yeah.
especially by his spouse.
Yep.
You know, a lot of times what we do as men is sort of out of the house, or it's not as much in the just look of the house or whatever, you know, the running of the kids and all that. It's a lot of times it's just stuff. We go to work, we build things, and that's where we're good, and people appreciate that. But when we come home, we don't always feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And so showing your guy that you appreciate what he brings to the table, who he is as a person. Remember, Hunting, we always talk about if we want something repeated by our kids, what do?
What's praised is repeated.
What's praised is repeated.
Yep.
And if you really like that your husband or your wife is doing something, don't just assume it's going to continue.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want it to continue, praise the heck out of that, admire that, and you know, they just can't wait to go do it again.
Yeah, it's kind of like a dog. You know, we had a dog.
See, there you go.
No,
wait, which
I'm not
one's the
calling
dog?
you a dog.
Who's
I'm not
the
calling
dog?
you a dog. I'm saying that we had a dog that would go get everyone else's paper in our neighborhood, because when he would bring it in, we would give him a treat. So he thought, well, if one treat, he would go do 3 or 4 treats, you know?
And then I had to go back in the car, drive around, and deliver newspapers all morning.
So again, fondness and admiration and appreciation. Also, by the way, humor is a huge part of this. If you can laugh and enjoy each other and have fun, build that in your week, you know, put that on your calendar. Don't just say, oh, we don't have time for a date. Man, you want to spend that time and play together with your spouse.
So I think of these are all the little love languages kind of that we're talking about a little bit, those words of appreciation and the gifts. And how about the physical touch? How about the kissing or holding hands or just hanging around and being with each other? Those are things too that every chance that you can, especially if you know what that does to your partner, don't slough it off. You've got to partake, and you've got to, you know, build them that way.
Masters make kissing a priority.
Whoa.
Okay, another one. Here it is. And this is kind of a strange wordage, but just bear with me. Gottman calls them making relationship bids. And basically, it is creating these small moments of connection, whether it be holding your partner's hands or reaching over for a kiss or opening the door for them. You know, those are little things that just mean a lot. And it's really how they're not just reached out for, but how they're received. And so, for instance, I use this example a lot, and I've seen it in my office where a husband, maybe that's an emotional moment in the counseling session, and he will go over and he'll reach for his partner's hand on her chair. And there's really some ways to receive that. And one of them is, and I love when I see this, she grabs it back. And maybe even like starts to, you know, rub his finger or whatever. And so like shows that I see you and I want to connect with you. That's an accepting of the bid. But then you have these other women who are kind of indifferent. Maybe they're not really sure if they're mad at their spouse or not. So she just kind of leaves it sitting there like a dead fish.
Thanks for grabbing my hand.
So
now
he's
you
grabbing
get off of it.
And it's kind of like he doesn't know, like, is she mad? Or...
No response to it.
Yeah, no response.
No real acknowledgement of it.
Yeah.
And so then there's a very kind of indifferent sort of feeling.
Or even worse.
And then the other one, just think about this. If you go to reach for someone's hand and they pull it back, that's an actual rejection.
Yeah.
And so those are when we give bids, whether it's a kiss goodbye or a kiss hello, whether it's just trying to put the arm around them, trying to do something affectionate, it's either going to be accepted or it's going to be kind of neutral or it's going to be rejected.
Yeah.
But how you do that will determine how the other person feels and either continues it or stops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you've had a fight and your spouse tries to, you know, kiss and make up and you reject that and then you reject it again and again, then don't get mad if it stops.
Right.
Okay. And
it will stop because
it's
very difficult to continue to do something and get no response back from it.
Yeah. And so doing these things of friendship and building connection and really affirming and just being positive around your spouse really creates this environment, that's very positive. So when conflict does occur, and it is going to occur, that you're going to kind of look at things from a kind of a positive lens instead of a negative one. And so, masters of relationships have 5 positive connections to every one conflict.
So we mentioned that last week, the idea that it takes such a strong ratio of positives to negatives, because it's like anything, if I'm at work all day and I'm just knocking it out and doing a great job, but I make one significant mistake, that will be the thing for most of us, not everyone, but for most of us, that'll be the thing that ruins my day. Yeah. That one thing, even though I knocked the ball out of the park in so many other areas. And the same thing happens with our relationship. If you're doing a lot of great things for your partner, but you hit them below the knee, so to speak, with something heavy, something negative, that's going to be where their focus is.
Yeah, that's where they remember. Most fights occur when one or both spouses do not feel emotionally connected to the other. They feel like you're not listening, that you didn't hear them, that you don't care. And so you may think you care and that you're showing they love you, you love them. But man, those fights and conflicts occur when they don't feel that and that connection. So.
And I see this in recently working with a couple that are working really hard to restore this connection, okay? And because of habits, like we talked about before, because of patterns, it was very typical that while they were talking, they were interrupting each other. And so they both admitted that they interrupt each other all the time. Yeah. And I asked them, I said, okay, so stop for a second. If you interrupt, what does that actually tell your partner about how well you were listening? Yeah. Because in order for me to interrupt you, you can be halfway through explaining your thought. And if I'm already intercepting your thought with what I'm going to put out, from the point that I am thinking of my rebuttal or my response, I've shut down the listening. Yep. Okay. And then if that goes back and forth, if both of us are into interrupting or problem solving, suggesting answers, we're not good listeners.
Yeah. So, wow. We are running out of time. So we've got to get to the conflict part, because the people that are listening that want to divorce-proof their marriage, they may say, that sounds really great, and it might have worked maybe 10 years ago, but all we do is fight. And so we want to get to, how do we resolve conflict? How do we manage these disagreements that we have? And Gottman says, if you start with a base of a strong friendship, then the conflict resolution is easier. But we know that conflicts occur. We still have them. So here, let's talk about real quick the different key elements to managing and resolving conflict.
Yeah, so the first one is, when we see this conflict coming on, we can either come at it hard and critical, like, you always say that. What's the problem? You're always on my case. Yeah. Think about how harsh that comes off. If you come off with that kind of tone and that sort of look, right away, your partner is going to go into a defensive mode. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, we're into a who's going to win situation. Yeah. All right. And so we both lose when we go into those situations. So we talk about approaching with a soft startup. Okay. Yeah. The idea, like I talk about this, hon, all the time, the best way to get a non-defensive approach in this is to start with an apology. Yeah. If I start with, hon, I just got to tell you, I really messed up there the other day. I'm sorry for that. Yeah. Most good women are not going to say, you better apologize. Yeah. No, they're going to be like, wow, because they're going to feel that you try to connect to their heart.
Yeah. And for instance, us ladies, I'm just saying, I'm speaking for myself here. I jump to conclusions really quick. For instance, if Merle's late getting home from work and I immediately come at him when he gets home, like, where you been? Have you been cheating on me? Okay, that's not going to go over very well.
Well, you haven't come like that.
Yeah.
No.
But if you say, hey, I was worried about you. Is everything okay? I couldn't sleep tonight because you weren't home and I didn't know what was going on. And so that just is a really softer approach of, like, basically saying, like, where the heck were you? And so that's number one. And the second thing is that you work toward compromise. And so maybe you do say, hey, I was really worried about you. And you come back at it like, hey, the boss, I couldn't help it. The boss kept me late. So then you work toward compromise where you would maybe say, hey, I understand maybe where you would have been worried. Maybe next time I'll make sure I call first.
Right. So the compromise is basically the two of you coming to an agreement on how you can prevent that from happening again. Yes. Acknowledging what you did wrong or what was hurtful. So own that. We have to own that part rather than saying, hey, well, I was late because the boss made me stay. How about, I was late.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. What do we need to do next time? And so maybe this is as simple as, hey, just a phone call. That you might be running a few minutes late or that you had to stop somewhere, whatever, that would go a long way. Remember, hon, this is all kind of at the protection of trust.
Yeah.
And if we lose trust, as we've talked about many times, if I lose trust, confusion leads to distrust, and distrust will cause this marriage to unwind.
And we also have said many, many times before in different shows, it can't be about the win. It can't be about keeping score. If you're saying like he's done this 3 days in a row and you've been tracking it, then you're missing the mark. He needs to hear your heart of concern and worry and confusion instead of like tracking him and counting the times. And, please stop keeping score.
Yeah. So the next one is this: quickly make repairs when needed. And so that's that idea. Emerson Eggerichs refers to this as the mature one. The mature one's going to see quick. And when I say mature, like the one who goes, I'm not going to make this the issue. I want to get to solution.
Right.
I want to get past this because I don't want to get stuck in this muck that we're in right now. So we are going to go quick to repair. Okay, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
What do we need to do? How about this? I do not want to look at Linda and say, this is what you need to start doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because now that is a blame. Okay. Instead, I'm going to say, here's what I need. Here's what I need to do. Here's what I need to feel better.
Yeah.
And then when she leans into that, she will work towards my heart.
Yeah.
Well, what could I do to help?
Admitting where you fall short, even if it's 5% of the problem in your mind, admit to that 5%. Say you're sorry and apologize for that portion of it. Quickly try to repair. And then you need to fight fair. And we did a whole show before about fighting fair. No blaming, no cussing, no yelling, no name calling, no disrespectful talk, no physical contact. All of those things that just really kind of muddy the waters. And no one wants to be in that.
People fight to their strengths, and you have to recognize that. We talk about it all the time. They fight to their strengths and they avoid their weakness. If I know that Linda's weakness is that she gets scared when she feels like she's going to lose control, if I'm not a good person, I'm going to try to make her feel out of control through intimidation, through a loud voice, through banging a fist. These are the things that I'm going to try to do to upset her. And when you think about doing that, that's not fighting fair, okay? Yeah. No differently than if Linda's version was to bring up my past, all my past wrongdoings, just to bring back all the dirt that I ever, had, and she constantly pulls that back up. That's not fighting fair.
Yeah. So when you feel your heartbeat starting to increase and you feel like your blood's boiling and your pulse is raising and you're sweating, it's time to take a time out. It's time to de-escalate the problem, and it's time to learn how to calm and soothe yourself.
Talk about this. There's not a session that goes by when we work with couples about first not learning how to recognize symptoms. Everybody's symptoms are a little bit different. Yeah. Some of us can feel the face go flush. Some of us can feel the heart. Some of us can see a stare that comes out of the eyes. I know right away when you're angry. Some of us do eye roll. Some of us clench fists. Some of us grind teeth. Some of us go silent. Okay, no words are a bunch of bad words right there when we hear nothing. So whatever it is, you have to identify yours. And when you identify them, then you have a responsibility. Yeah. And the responsibility is to find out how you de-escalate or calm yourself down.
Yeah. Take a walk. Go for a run. Take a nap. Listen to music.
If Linda said before that most of our arguments come when we are emotionally not engaged or we're upsetting each other emotionally. If I'm emotionally charged, all right, that is all I need to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I have to recognize that I need to calm down. And so, find out what works for you. Like, I think it's very important, the idea of you do what works for you and you don't tell your partner how to calm down. Because that's just going to flare them up more. Yeah. Once you both realize how you calm down, then you help each other get to that. You used to do so well with that. You still do, but I don't run. But when I was a runner and I'd be either tired or exhausted or frustrated or whatever, and I would come in and she could feel the anxiety or the tension, and she'd say, why don't you go out for a little run? Yep. And I never took that as an insult of you need to get away. I took it as she's recognizing and giving me kind of some permission here to go out, because I would come back a different person at the end of that run. Yeah.
And then the final thing is to come back together and to calmly work toward a solution or a compromise. And so you can't just brush it under the rug and kind of ignore it and pretend and just pretend like it never happened. You've got to come back. And that's the mature really working together as a master, wanting this relationship in this conflict to be resolved. So we got to do that. So we got to rule.
Yeah, and when we come back together, we can't come back together 3 days later.
No.
We have to come back. We always talk about coming back together before the sun goes down. And the reason being is that if you don't come back together before the sun goes down, chances are the sun's going to go down. You are going to wake up in the next morning and you're going to go about your way. You're going to go to work, you're going to go do your thing, and 3 or 4 days will pass, and it never actually got resolved.
You think you let it go.
Right, and so the seed got planted, and then all of a sudden, when something else happens, we throw a little fertilizer on the seed, it begins to grow again, okay? So that's why we don't just, and a lot of times couples get very fooled into thinking, oh, no, that's past. We don't even talk about it anymore. You may not talk about the subject, but the hurt from the subject is still planted.
And that's when I want you to go back to that dialoguing and spend an evening saying, hey, are you okay? Are we okay? Last week it was kind of hurtful. Or, do you feel like we resolved that well? And when couples begin to do that, they thrive and they start to dream together and they build trust and they feel like they have a committed spouse. And man, hon, that's when you see intimacy and passion and romance in a marriage.
Did you say Viagra? Or is that what did you say?
But you can't build intimacy when you don't trust your partner. And by the way, if you keep threatening to leave or divorce, all bets are off. No one's going to trust that. No one's going to believe that you're going to be there tomorrow if you threatened to leave yesterday. So you've got to commit that the D word is not in your vocabulary. You're not going to threaten to leave when things get tough.
That's such a great point, hon, because we throw it around as if it's going to intimidate or threaten. And what it does is it just sort of puts the defenses up on the other person. I actually have a challenge to all of my couples that I work with that are not doing well together, that aren't getting along. And my challenge to them is, from this day forward, you will never have another argument. In other words, I want them to actually say that. We will not argue again. Because the argument is all about the win. The argument is all about, well, if we argue, I'm going to work very hard to win. And if I win, it is about me. So the rule is you will never argue again. That does not mean we don't disagree.
And have conflict,
But conflict has a means to resolve. Argument is all about who's going to win, and that means somebody has to lose.
Pounding your fist and yelling the longest and loudest.
So it's just the whole idea of argument has a negative tone, and it doesn't mean you and I don't get along or we don't disagree. It means that it's been a while since we've argued, and it's not because we're great. It's because we know that when we argue, we just hurt each other worse.
Yeah.
And so we go, let's just let it calm down, and let's come back to the table later.
So as we wrap up, we just want to tell you that as we see these relationships become masters, not masters of disaster, but masters of relationship.
I like masters of disaster.
Man,
it sounds cool.
Couples start to dream together and they start to really feel safe and they start to share their past and their dreams and their fears and they start to really look forward. And man, that's when you've reached the heart of your partner, hon. And I love to see when couples get there. And they can, even when there's been contempt or criticism or stonewalling, you can get back to that.
When you dream together, you also then start to find greater purpose together. And when you have greater purpose together, it is easier for you to make the small things remain small. Because if we have a greater purpose, Rock Solid Families is a huge purpose for Linda and I. The last thing we want to do is to let some little disagreement about how we should organize papers in our office break up Rock Solid Families.
Not that we've ever had that before.
No, that has never happened. It wasn't an argument. It was a strong disagreement. And so that whole idea, though, that you have a greater purpose that you work together for, it starts to allow you to put priority in what you're really going to pour energy in that's going to separate you.
Yeah. And you start to begin to look for the legacy. Like, what do you want to leave long after you're gone for your children and your grandchildren? What do you want them to see? And, Hon Gottman was not a Christ follower. He was a researcher. He's actually comes from the Jewish faith, but he studied the data and the facts. But as Christ followers, we have a different perspective because we believe that Christ is our purpose, that he is the foundation we build on, not just all these facts and data, which are great. I'm not saying we should throw them away, but I am saying that we believe in a God who is bigger than any situation we find ourselves in, any conflict that we get ourselves in mess with. And God can do bigger things than we can ever
The most
do.
interesting and cool part about that for those of you in the Christian faith is that when you study the research and you actually look at the data, whether it was Chris Brown from the National Fatherhood Institute or Initiative, or you got John Gottman and his work, both cases bring back the importance of faith and having, remember we talked about that purpose? Well, that higher purpose being God, serving God, both of those serve extremely well. God designed marriage, so he ought to know a little bit about the research and how we treat each other and how we get through these difficult, challenging times. So it's no surprise that the scientific data leans right back into God's word.
Right. They don't contradict each other.
Not
they
at
actually
all.
complement one another. And Rock Solid Families was built on the parable that Jesus tells in the Gospels about two builders, a wise builder and a foolish builder. And both of those houses had severe storms. The wind and the waves and the rain came down and beat against both houses. So we are not promising you a storm-free marriage, but we are promising you through God's word and the hope that we have in Christ and the foundation that he allows us to have in a marriage, we are promising you some storm proofing, some divorce proofing, because he is going to be the foundation that we build on.
No doubt about it. Okay, so now you not only know what the predictors of divorce are, but now you have remedy for how you're going to deal with it. If it is not natural, if the two of you struggle to kind of figure out how to go through this, please give us a call. You can call us, you can email us. This is what we do. I mean, this is the type of stuff that we take a look at, and we look at your particular situation and say, well, how do we, it's not a one size fits all. Because you have personalities, you have background, you have interests of differences. And so how can we work with you to help you get through these different stages? At the end of the day, we all win when your marriage wins. And so that's kind of how we go about things. So we want to wrap it up. We want to thank our sponsors. Let's thank Maxwell Construction and Casey's Outdoor Solution for continuing to be part of the Rock Solid Radio programming. Hun, anything else you got to say?
We just want to thank you for listening to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
Where's that Viagra stuff you had? I gotta write that down. Man,
Stop.
You didn't tell me you were going to say that. That's good stuff. Signing off. Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. They offer a wide selection of high-quality plants, landscaping materials, and home decor. They do amazing high-quality work and can help you transform your indoor and outdoor living spaces into something beautiful. So stop by Casey's Outdoor Solutions today and let them know you appreciate their support for Rock Solid Radio. Visit Casey's today at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana.